it's amazing to finally chat to you in person, Bud, in lieu of WhatsApp correspondence. So welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Yeah, it's been a long week waiting for this.
Yeah, look, a caveat on my side is that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. When I first started chatting to Ben, I had a long script. I had a lot of questions, and listening to that man and that character speak, we could very easily have got a 2 or a 3 hour Q&A going. So we're going to do our very best to try and mitigate that as much as possible. I feel that if we don't manage to wrap up all the loose ends, we can always have you back on. I know that there's quite a lot of the technical aspect that you'd like to discuss, which I personally find invaluable, and I feel that a lot of the diehard followers on Dark Tide will feel invaluable. But what I would really like is just for you to give us a sort of preliminary elevator pitch as to how your obsession with this elusive animal commenced and where we are today.
Yeah. Well, Jack, I did studies in nature conservation at Pretoria Tech, which was the greatest lesson of my life. It took us to magnificent places, one of them being Rockdale Delta. We worked with a company, Wilderness Safari, and Rockdale Bay. And we always were poking holes, trying to find a gap through to get to Rockdale Bay, and the opportunity came up, so we left the Delta. And Rocktail Beach Camp was just opened a month prior to that, so we joined as the management team there. And and it started on like any fly fisherman's evolutionary path. You start off small and you kind of whet your appetite and you grow from there. So I started with the brassies and the bluefin kingies and whatever would take a sort of a whistler pattern or something smaller, a little clouser. And then I don't know, I can't recall the exact point of hearing about the 100 Club, but when I did, because already at that stage I'd caught a couple of decent Geets on conventional tackle. When I heard about the 100 Club, I thought, no, well, that's it, I'm done. But the biggest rod I had was a 10, and I mean the 10 got tested at Lala Neck one afternoon. I put brassies in. It was textbook water. It was just perfect. Those people that know Lala Neck, there's a reef that meets the shore, and then there's a barrier reef, and there's a channel in between these two. And I mean, it's just a Geet highway. So I put a cast in there to some foamy, frothy water, and I went so tight. If I think about it now, I'm still in shock. My line basket was still full of line, and I gripped that line as hard as I could, and I was totally overwhelmed. Wet hands, slippery line, and the fish overwhelmed me, and the line slipped out of my hands. And the loose line in the basket hit me on the side of my flank, and it left kind of nasty welts. And that was it. The deal was done. And then it was straight to whoever it was, and I got the 12, got myself kitted, went up to Ben, and then it's just a penny drop. The passion was there for fly fishing. The ambition to catch this fish was just the next natural step. And then from there, it was just constant. Every opportunity I got, I was out there fishing for them.
And how often would you say, I mean, a lot of people, I don't think, let's say people that are perhaps a little naive to this pursuit of what we do, and they hear things along the lines of a largemouth yellowfish being the fish of 1,000 casts. When you said you pursued them at each and every opportunity in turn, give people an idea of how often and how many hours you were putting on the water to chase this fish.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So look, in the beginning, I was fairly naive. I wasn't fishing the best times and the best places. I was trying everything just to see what would work. My approach wasn't honed at that stage. But by the time I eventually landed my first big one, I was in a year and a half. And I don't know how many hours, probably 200 hours, 250 in sort of 3-4 hour sessions. Yeah. So it's work. It worked. It's work.
Just a quick one, if I could just ask my Dark Tide crew that are watching this, just to ensure that our videographer Steve is in fact filming this, so we can put it on our YouTube channel later. Tiger, Dawes, Josh, Steve, please ensure that this is being filmed. Yeah, like 250 hours, 2 to 3 hour sessions. For perspective, although we can actually go out there and flog day in, day out, I think it's fair to say that there's a very small window of opportunity at select times of the day and tides which I want you to discuss and elaborate on. So 250 hours is approximately how many sessions would you say you went out there, give or take, before you got your first fish?
Jack. No, I mean, I was fishing 3 times a week, in some cases 4 times a week. Fly, you know, there was conventional mixed in there as well, over a year and a half, and through every season, winter, summer, it didn't matter. I tended to focus on the winter. You might know that I've got a favor for the winter Geets as opposed to the traditional.
Yes, I'm looking forward to discussing that. Yeah.
Yeah, we must touch on that. That's a bit of a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So the approach, Jack, you're right. The window is very small, but it's regular. You know, the window is very regular. We've got 2 spring tides, and we've got 2 major water movements in a month. And in any given month, you're going to have some storm, some sort of southwester that comes through that aligns with high water in the low light hours, early morning or late evening, good afternoon. And that's your window. And if you're at the right place and you've got that southwester coming through, I mean, Ben mentioned this last week. The sea's running strong south to north. You've got current, you've got heavy waves, and the waves are off, the fish are going to be there. And I fished a lot like that. I can't remember how many fish we took on conventional tackle in those conditions. I mean, it's plenty. I eventually stopped going with conventional stuff in those conditions. But my fishing buddy was fishing conventional tackle. He must have 30 or 40 Geets of like 110, 120s most often out from under my nose.
Yes, that's incredible.
So, yeah, it's mad. I mean, those bays really do cook. They really do cook. So I've got a couple
Gareth,
of things.
I'm sorry. Before we progress, I just want to sort of slow this down and compartmentalize this a little bit, because I think what you're saying is so vital. So basically what you're saying is that, like what Ben said, is that when the water was frothed up, and it was, you know, what 90% of fly fishermen would turn their back on, with that southwesterly, that would basically be the proverbial dinner bells, and that's when those GTs would move into those bays, and that's when we would get proverbially fly fishing erect, so to speak.
Well, that's exactly it. And the reason for that, Jack, is, I mean, we talk about the southwester. You get southwesters that come through that don't cause the sea to run. You don't get this running current running south to north. When you do have it running south to north, what happens is you get heavy swell that breaks quite aggressively on these reefs, these bays that protrude every sort of 6 or 7 kilometers, the entire way up that coastline from St. Lucia, really, all the way into southern Mozambique.
Yeah.
And it's too rough for the reef fish to hold in those reefs, so they come find sanctuary in the bay, in the corner of the bay where there's calm water, and the Geets know that very well. And here's the reason why the Geets are looking for bait or looking for a meal under those conditions.
And you know, you said you hooked that one fish on a 10 weight. How big were the 2 GTs that you got over a meter, Gareth?
So my first one was a 106, and the second one, which was about 3 months after that, was a 105.
That's fantastic. And how many fish did you, other than that one that you hooked on a 10 weight, how many times did you hook fish that basically slapped you around there like a red-headed stepchild?
Well, the first one was the most painful. That was at Cozy Mouth. So we went to Cozy Mouth in October when the mullet ran out of the mouth, having known that was a good time to be there. And I started on the northern bank, and it wasn't happening. It was dead quiet. I mean, there was no mullet moving out. So I saw a couple of fish running out on the southern bank, so I waded across to the southern bank. And they had just made the wave line. They made the surf, and I just saw a big splash. And I saw 2 of those big bull mullets, whatever we call them, the sort of kilo and a half type fish, come racing back into the mouth. And I had a full cast out, and I could see that my timing was going to be out. So I underhand strip, double hauled the thing, the line back in, and the Geet just chased these 2 fish to within probably 20 meters of me, and I had one shot at it. So I knew that if I'm going to make this work, I must put the fly between the mullet and the Geet. I was lucky enough, I put the fly in front of him, bang. And it was mayhem from there, but it was an easy fight. You'll understand the mouth, right in the mouth. That fish really got nowhere to go. You know, he's got more than 100 meters. So I had him bug it before he made it to the reef. And so the fight was over, and I thought, you know, this was done. I was going to get the pick, and there was an audience, and it was great. And I was alone. So I was alone on the southern bank, and the rest of the team on the northern bank.
Rookie
So I got
era,
to fish.
Gareth. Rookie era.
Yeah, I fished alone quite often. It's a big mistake. But anyway, I got to fish into the wash on the beach. But I had a bundle. When he went off, I had a bundle of line go through the guides, fortunately. But now that bundle was in my tip guide. And there was nothing I could do. So I thought, oh, it's not that bad. He's tired. I'll hand line him. That's a rookie error. And I hand lined him, and a wave came in, and he got a bit of depth in the water, and he buzzed off, and he popped me on that bundle. And I made two decisions there. One was to change my leader setup. And the other one is you take it seriously right to the end. There's no giving up, no matter what stage of the fight you're in. Yeah, so I made a big effort in getting my leader setups right, that you just can't pop off, not easily pop off, and that this thing takes a lot more seriousness than what I'd given it.
Fantastic. And I want to break that down with you. I feel that I've learned a hell of a lot from just the correspondence we've had over the last couple of months. I've sort of reinvented the wheel with a lot of my tackle, especially given the fact that I'm sitting here in lockdown and we don't have much else to do. So I've been redoing knots, and I've incorporated a lot of the stuff that you've told me to good use. So thank you for that. But before we discuss that, do you feel that it's possible for a fly angler to catch a fish over 135 centimeters from the coast in the surf zone on a fly rod? Seeing as you've got them up to 138 on conventional.
Yeah, it's a big fish. So it certainly is possible. I mean, we're carrying good quality breaks, 300 meters on our spools. So you've got the equipment to do it. You just need the opportunity, and you need the lay of the land. Fortunately, a big fish like that, you could never put him under any pressure. No matter how hard you try to palm that spool, he's not going to feel much pressure. So he's going to, out of his own aggression, tire himself out by running out and fighting you. And fighting the drag on the line, and fighting currents and waves and whatever it is. You could do it. You could, yeah, no, Jack, you could do it. You just need the opportunity. You need the opportunity, and you need the right land.
I see old Glenn Stewart over there is joining in. He said no, he's caught quite a few big fish on conventional, and he got a monster in Mozambique on fly. And then I've got Tiger over there saying it's not going to happen. And the only reason why Tiger's saying that's not going to happen is because he's quite butthurt. Our last trip to Rockdale Bay, he was in no uncertain terms shown his puss by an exceptionally large enraged GT that bent open his 5.0 Arex blue water hook like a pool noodle. But I think you'll agree with me, Gareth, that if he wasn't fishing with a T-bore and was fishing with an Abel or a Shilton or something along the likes, he most probably would have landed that fish.
Yeah. Did it go south? Did he hook it and did it run south?
Yep.
Yeah, no. Game over. Game over. No, you got no chance at Rocktail like that. The place where you can go target 130 plus fish is Island Rock. And I mean, that's an insane place to fish. I mean, Geets fishing off our coastline takes you to the limit of fly fishing. Absolutely. That's beyond the limits. So the interesting thing with Island Rock is that the sand spit that connects it to the mainland is washed through. So you've got a channel, and then you've got this rock that stands as an island.
Yes.
The channel is wide. It's about, I mean, depending on the tide and depending on how the sand moves, anything from about 200 to 300 meters. So what I would do is I would put on a couple of what do you call these things? I don't want to say flippers. People are going to hate fins, right? Right. The divers taught me to say fins, yeah? Put on fins and then swim out there with all my fly fishing kit and fish off that rock. And there, and I've saw the fish 4 times. He's resident there. That fish is in that 140 kilo class. I had to cast at him twice, I had to follow once. The first time, in fact, it was the first big Geets I ever saw. I was this time I actually wasn't out on that rock. I was on the rocks on the shore side, and I was still with my 10 weight, stripping in a little. It was a little whistler pattern with a chartreuse collar, and I thought, oh, that's cute. A turtle is following this thing. That's very sweet. And I stripped and I stripped and I stripped, and about 2 meters from the rod tip, I realized that's not a turtle. That's a Geet. an absolute monster, and that fly was 2 inches from his mouth, and nothing I could do would make him take that fly. So that was the first occasion. The second occasion, myself and my girlfriend, then she's now my wife, were walking back from where they dive at Rocktail. We're not going to dive now. Artists dive at Rocktail in this channel. And I had my 10 weight with me again. And we saw a bunch of these big mullets just rushing out of the channel. I knew it can only be a Geet that time of the day. And that's glassy water. It's nice, shallow, like Seychelles type water, so your chances are good. And about 60 meters behind them came this colossal Geet. And I put a caster in him. I had a flashy profile. He came in and looked at it, and then buggered off. He wasn't interested. So those are the 2 chances with him. And then I saw him twice after that. Once with the guys from African Water. We swam out there, Rob and Keith. And we saw him cruising in on the surface. And you get a real scale of his size. I mean, it's a massive fish. And then once from an SAPS chopper while we were doing patrols. And he was always within about 200 meters of where I'd seen him, you know, that sort of radius. So he's there, and the chances are there.
That's very smart, Gareth. I've never thought about keeping flippers in my waterproof bag, but I will definitely be doing that going forward, especially considering the fact that I nearly drowned on the bricks with my good friend Tiger last time I was there. But so just to sum up, Island Rock is a place that you actually swim to at low tide, and you're doing so at during twilight hours when there are sharks all over the place.
Yeah, that's the not so nice bit, is swimming back there. You know, you're swimming out and you're fishing the twilight, and they're swimming back through the dark ink, and that's no fun. But I mean, just picture this, Jack. You've got this Island Rock. You sit very proud of the water, and in front of you is dark blue with big, nasty reef, probably in 20, 30 foot of water. It's Geet heaven. It really is. And we've got a lot of fish there.
I'm getting an anxiety attack just listening to you talk about it.
We'll go there. We'll go there.
Yeah, I look forward. So tell us a little bit about the fly development. Tell us a little bit of how you changed your leaders, your tactics, and your thought process that you feel obviously added to your success, and how you feel will add to our success in future trips to come.
Okay, let's start with flies, Jack. So I started with all the traditional stuff, right? Throwing flashy profiles, sin profiles, everything with this deep body and a big presence, side-on presence, right?
Yes.
And I fished with Ben's wet cell, the Voodoo wet cell.
Yes.
And I worked hard on that, and it wasn't coming right. But, you know, I was in a difficult place because Ben was the godfather, and he had every fish over a meter already. So, you know, you need to follow. At a point, you need to accept that the way to do it, and you follow. And I did that religiously. And it just, things were not clicking. And I just decided, that's it. I'm doing something wrong. I must mix this up. So first thing I did is I stopped fishing those lines. And also you tend to hook up a lot if you're fishing over shallow reef. And I tended to hook quite a few turtles, which wasn't fun. They like to bite and let them out. So I went to the GT, that GT Airflow intermediate line.
Yes.
Instead of flies with a side-on profile, I tied flies with a right profile from underneath. So big presence.
So Gareth, you said you used the Airflow GT line. That's the one with a 50-pound core. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
And you changed your approach to not, well, in the way that you engineered the process is if you were of the opinion that the GTs were hunting up and not side on. And so you spent a lot more time creating profile to the fly from the underneath of the fly in lieu of just from the side when it was quite a flat profile. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way in the flies that I've been tying, but please carry on.
So just by way of a picture, Marius gave me rights to show you guys this. It highlights it perfectly in Marius's photo. You can't see clearly in the photo here, but it's one of the most clearest photos of a GT's lateral line. You can see how high it rides in the back. And we know about lateral lines. There's a reason for that. Look, it's not unique to the GTs. Every single one of our kingfish we get off of our coast have got the same lateral line arrangement, and the pelagics have the same thing. If you look at a wahoo, you look at a king mackerel, they all have that lateral line sitting proud on it. I mean, that tells you we know where his eyes sit. We know the shape of his face. We know that at 45 degrees from his eyes, he is a blind spot. He can't see below him. So what I discovered is that I'm actually fishing under these fish. And Jack, when I changed my approach to fishing above the fish, it was easy. It was literally easy. I mean, I got 4 fish, 2 of which were over a meter in 3 months after going a long period of time without landing the big ones.
Sure.
And flies-wise, I mean, it's got to be a big fly. These fish are hungry. They're big. They eat big food items. This
And
fly.
it's also why, Gareth, that I think that the popping and the plug fishermen are so successful.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I mean, the way that GT fisheries are moving is all stick baits. It's massive stick baits, 22 centimeter, 24, 26 centimeter stick baits. And all that thing is
on the surface. Yeah.
Yeah, on the surface. That's it. This fly, for example, Jack, this is called 3G. One of over my last fish was on this fly, the 105. So
yeah.
It's not schloppen, which gives you a nice. I mean, any sort of saddle hackles are wonderful, but the schloppen are great. But the most important thing is that the right profile from underneath. And I don't get a perspective of the size. This is 20 centimeters. So he needs to eat something big. And the fish responded to this very positively.
Yes.
Conversely, or inversely rather, this little sin profile, it's a fly from Ben. Awesome fly. We know what tigers do to these things. Your smaller kingy species, brassies, just don't leave this alone. And he's got the most awesome profile from the side, but underneath he doesn't count for much, especially when it's getting stripped very thin. So I think that highlights the point. And last thing is, I mean, this is sort of entry level on stick baits. This thing's 18 centimeters, but I mean, it's as wide as it is deep. And the guys are really hammering big Geets off of these things that look at big profiles.
Yeah.
And it's not unique to Geets. I mean, we're doing it with tigers. We're fishing things with tigers on the surface. All of our large Geet patterns are these bulky things that have a presence from underneath. Certain fish are just geared to be hunting up, and Geet is certainly one of them.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Now, in my chat with Gareth Reed at Mavangana, I said to him that I enjoyed the brush flies and they have fantastic application, but I hated the way that they fell flat proverbially and looked more snake and eel-like in the water than what I was looking for. And then obviously I came up with this dingon fly, which I'll show you guys now, and you can give me your thoughts on it. That fly is also about 17, 18 centimeters. And again, just like what Gareth's saying, you can see the meat of that fly from the belly. Nice big thick profile even from the top, but also what I found made a world of difference, and it's so interesting that you brought up the lateral line, is that all of these flies have a very audible rattle in it. And casting over a few days at fish that I could see, the flies that had rattles in them, every single time that I presented at a GT, that fish actively chased the GT. That GT actively chased the fly and didn't eat by virtue of the fact that it was an operator error. I missed a strip, or I tripped over a swell or something like that. But if it was not eaten, it was actively chased. It just goes to show, even that stick bait you held up has got a very audible, loud rattle that I think makes a massive difference.
No, absolutely. Look, I told you before, Jack, I think that dingon is the ultimate fly. For our coastline, you're not going to beat. There's nothing you could do to improve that. Getting longer is not going to make a difference. It has the right profile. That thing at night, and I've told you before, would be a real killer.
I really appreciate that, Gareth. Thank you. And so we've chatted about flies. We've chatted about lines. For those that have just jumped in, Gareth said that he was more proponent of the airflow intermediate lines in lieu of the wet cell faster sinking lines, and believed in a fly with a bigger profile that could be seen from below, as GTs, the positioning of their eyes, the positioning of their lateral line relied more on hunting upwards instead of hunting down. Now, you spoke a little bit about leader setup. Do you want to break that down for us, how you change the leaders and how you fish those leaders and why?
Yeah, look, I went really gnarly as you possibly can on leader setup, Jack. I got a couple of those T-line, it's a rock and surf leader that's tapered at 9 meters. And the one I used was a 1.5 mil, so that's about 150 pound breaking strain, and it tapered down to a 0.9 mil. But the taper only happens over about 9 foot. It doesn't gradually taper over the 9 meters. It only tapers over about 9 foot. So I cut out that 9 foot, and I connect them with a 50 pound braided loop. onto my line. Not a braided loop, but a braided sleeve, right? So it's knotless.
Yes.
When I hold this line, I get a soft spot in my heart. You know, this Paul Weingarts gave me this line. And it was the last time I saw him, so I'll never change this. It feels good to hold it up. So there's my fly line. You can't really see it clearly. But
Well,
you get the point.
just before you go on there, to those people that are jumping on, Paul Weingarts was arguably the best, if not the most incredible GT-obsessed fly fisherman on our coast. That, as I understand it, at one stage also got 5 GTs over a meter on fly, and many others in the sort of 10 to 15 kilogram class from many hours spent on the beach. But we will devote an entire interview just to him. He's an incredible guy, and it would be a disservice just to talk about him in passing. And I think we should give we should have one entire episode to give him his own due diligence. But Gareth, what you're saying there is that you use the braided sleeve to join the T line to the fly line, almost like a Chinese knot, instead of or in lieu of a braided loop, and you felt that was more beneficial. Yeah,
no, certainly, Jack. It worked for me. And the other thing is, you know, my leaders got a bit longer, so I was typically throwing. I got up to 15 foot. That gets a bit lumpy, so I cut down to about 12 foot, and that was my comfort zone, and I stuck to that. So I had a 1.5 mil to 90 mil tapering leader, and then a bike tippet that I used. It was a 0.9 mil Maxima ultra green, great stuff. And then with a perfection loop onto the fly, and that worked a charm. It worked an absolute charm. In hindsight, and you know, we've spoken about this. If I went back, or when I go back rather, and I do it again, I'm going to scale down tremendously. Probably go with like a very hard fluoro, 50-pound hard fluoro. Because the amount of fish we took on conventional tackle with light leaders, and I'm talking like a 0.75 mil, which is, what is that? That's about 30 kilos breaking strain. It's all light. And, you know, the reels don't have fantastic drags. You know, fishing with reels with 18-pound drags, that's nothing. And we pulled fish after fish without any hassles. The one thing we did learn, Jack, is that a Geet is a bugger. So he's classified as a pelagic, right? And there was talk of reclassifying them as a reef fish to afford them protecting from the commercials and guys that are doing chartered fishing and things. Because if it's a reef fish, you can't fish with it. Certainly with Mangalisa. And it's obvious. You dive with them, you find them in caves and big crevasses, and they'll take something off the surface when you're trolling. But he's that hard to reef fish. He lives in the reef and lives in caves. So it's obvious that the reef is his safe place. It's his sanctuary. So if you put him under pressure in his first run when he's fully fired up, the first thing he's going to do, he's going to find sanctuary. And where's that? In the rocks. I got a fish of 109 centimeters at Millibangalala on 20-pound braid with a 20-pound lead and a silly little 1-ounce plug. And that fish, I mean, I pulled him over the most nasty. I didn't pull him, he pulled me around. It was more the swell that pushed him to the beach. But he swam right on top of the rocks. And they do that same thing at night. If you hook them at night, they don't know about the rocks. They just swim straight and they sit high in the water column, much like a Gareth would do. So I've got a feeling that the best thing to do with these fish is let him burn out his first run and then put the pressure. Because once he's got that fire out of his soul, you've effectively won. He's not going to find the rock. He's not going to look for the rocks again. Sure.
So you'll scale down. Look, having fought a fish of 100 centimeters before and having hooked them, I'll have to respectfully disagree with you at this particular point, just by virtue of, again, how I saw what I've seen happen to anglers and what happened to me. But, you know, if it means catching more fish and being more successful, I'll throw a 2-weight if it means that there's more opportunities at these fish. So Gareth, use intermediate line. You use a braided leader connection to a tapered T-line surf leader with a bite tippet on the end, which I think makes a lot of sense. Makes sense to me because I'm also hooking the bricks, and my friends are hooking the bricks quite often. And if we need to break off, you don't have to sacrifice the entire fly line. And also, if a fish breaks off, you don't have to, you know, it's not going to have meters and meters or feet of trailing behind it, which is going to otherwise damage or, inadvertently kill that fish, which is not what we're looking for. Gareth, again, we can talk about the subject for hours and hours and hours. Something that I'd like you to touch on, which I think is extremely interesting, is that you said you prefer chasing GTs in winter, which is against all conventional wisdom. And why do you say that? And can you shed some light on that subject?
Yeah, Jack. So I think, what are there? There's 17 or 18 1 meter plus fish that have been taken on our coastline. And I think there's 7 at Rocktail, right? So
yeah,
predominantly the fish came out at Cozy. And it's only in recent years that some fish have been taken out of Rocktail. And Cozy is a summer destination, as is Bunga Neck. They're summer destination. The thing that I found, having caught so many on conventional tackle, is that from May, actually even in April, we got some good fish in April. So let's call it April. From April until about September, the Geets seem to be more responsive to a fly or to a bait. I just got them in much greater numbers in winter, and the winter storms are fairly plentiful. And another thing I noticed is in summer there's a lot more bait fish, and a Geet is a thing that you've got to match the hatch. I don't know how many fish I saw that were smashing up mullet or smashing shad or flagtails or moonies or big-eye kingies. If they were into the bait fish, forget it. And I mean, I had these things at my feet regularly. I mean, I had sharks battling. I had Geets battling sharks over a school of bonnies that the sharks had brought into Rockdale Bay. And wounded bonnies at my feet. They wouldn't look at the fly. And in winter, that doesn't happen. In winter, they're solely relying on the reef fish that are getting washed off the reef in the southwesterlies. So their window might be a bit narrower. And that might be the reason why we start getting them a bunch more in winter.
I've got you. That makes a lot of sense, Gareth. So, look, I think this is going to be the first of many discussions. I really appreciate the value that you've added. And like I said, it's been an absolute honor to finally speak to you properly and not just over written text and social media correspondence. I'm also going to be completely unapologetic about the fact that I think that I've reignited a very venomous poison inside you to chase these fish again. And I'm looking forward to doing some of these trips with you in future. If anyone has any particular questions that they'd like to ask Gareth before we wrap up, please don't hesitate to punch them through and we'll field them as best as possible. Josh wants to know fly colors.
Make it dark, make it natural.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 2 things that were great lessons for me, and I think will be valuable for the audience. Is that a critical thing, absolutely critical, line management. You've got to get your line management right. So before every session, I stretched my lines. I mean, really stretched them, put them to almost breaking point. And then in your stripping basket, I took those funny little cable ties we all have. I took those out because what they do is that when your line falls, those cable ties capture them. And if your line falls in a narrow loop or in a tight loop, it holds in that loop. If they're out, they lie to the perimeter of the basket. So you have big loops. I never had a problem with line management. Never. I made a few mistakes, learned from it, adapted my approach, and was better off that way. So I stretched out my lines, never had those things to contain my line in the basket. That was a big thing.
So what did you use instead of the cable ties?
Nothing. Just a clean basket.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but the line was strict. That was critical. So there was no memory in that line. So when it lay in the inside of the basket, it lay in big loops. So it would go out clean and would come in. Yeah. The other thing is for you and I and the guys that are seasoned in doing this, we know what to expect. We know how to plan it. We know when to go. And the southwesterlies have been measured and been mentioned a few times, but it's kind of daunting if you haven't done it before. Like, where do you start? So everybody knows, get a 12, get the thing on, buy it from Jack, whatever you do. Those conditions are critical. They're absolutely critical. You've got to know how to read them. You've got to know how to track them. So if I can offer some advice, there's a really awesome weather service called iWeather. iWeather, spelled A-R, not E-R. And they've got live stations around the country. You just jump on their webpage, and you can see they give you awesome charts. Let me just show you quickly, in fact, because I still follow this stuff. Unfortunately, on the camera, it's going to be in reverse, but you get the picture. Right, so that's you see it's all back to front. We can see there's Durban.
Sure.
So this is a very, very underdeveloped southwester. It's more like kind of heavy precipitation. There's a nice system there, in fact, where Rocktail, cozy area would be. So that's marginal, right? I wouldn't jump in my car and drive to Rocktail. If I was down in the area, I'd make an effort to get onto the rocks. But last week, Tuesday, it was just poetry, man. You know, it was a day before Ben's interview.
Yeah.
The tide was high late in the afternoon, sort of 5:30. It's absolutely awesome. And sunset was about half an hour later, so it's big water, low light conditions, and that satellite image. There's Durban, there's Maputo, so you know Rocktail cozies in that area there. If you see that, we've got 2 days of fishing. You jump in your car, you got to get there. So that's cool.
It's interesting that you say that, Gareth, because last year when I got my fish, I had a whole bunch of people, a lot of which are actually watching this now. And there was a big tsunami or a storm or something along the likes that looked like it was going to hit the area, and almost everyone bailed. And they said, no, this is not going to happen. And myself and my friend Jimmy said, fuck this, we're going. But when I say we had as many shots at GTs every day as one of the best days in the Seychelles, it wouldn't be an exaggeration by any stretch of the imagination. The fish were there, and they were there in force. So I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, in all my time fishing there, I never saw what you guys saw in a weekend, like you saw in the beginning of the year. I mean, you spoke about 25 to 30 opportunities at good-sized fish. In the whole 3 years I worked at Rocktail and lived there, I never saw that. So your experience was truly...
I could kill myself that I didn't convert more often, but yeah, and the 4 or 5 trips I've done since then, I had 3 occasions like that where we had a minimum of 10 to 20 shots at fish that we could see. I hooked one, unfortunately, that came off, and I was it just didn't manage to happen. But hopefully on another one of our trips, we can experience that again. But Gareth, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up. I'd like to thank you once more for imparting all the information that you have. If there's any last little bit that you'd like to add there.
No, that's it. I see a question there from Josh, just quickly on retrieve. So, I mean, I also made the fatal mistake of just putting the rod under my arm and double hand hauling in and as fast as possible. A big mistake, It works maybe in daylight hours, you know, when the fish are really fired up. But at night, you've got to slow it down. You're more imitating the movement of the bait fish. You're going to mimic that, as you know. And the bait fish just lift gently with whatever water movement it is. So a single-handed retrieve with a twitch here and there, especially at night, that's the way to do it.
I got you. Well, Gareth, thanks again, man. It's been a real pleasure and a real honor, and I look forward to many trips in the future.